Welcome to Jaws Travel Media. This is your #1 travel channel that brings you captivating stories and travel news around the world. Keep it locked to get your full dose of uncensored travel news and exciting stories around the world. Today we feature and bring to you an exciting story on the history of trains and locomotives, one of the greatest forms of transport of all time. Welcome.
Bags and then you will go away. I'm not gonna be begging you to stay. Said maybe if you asked me yesterday, I would handle this differently. Things are different, I'm a new me. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen.
Great Britain's railway system is the world's oldest. Long before steam-powered locomotives, the system began with local wind wagonways. These involved laying planks along cleared paths to make the transport of goods easier and faster. Over time, and in certain locations, some of these wagonways were connected. In essence, a wagonway was a railway using animals, generally horses or oxen, to pull the cars or wagons. German miners at Colbeck in Cumbria, England, used one of the first in the 1560s to haul coal. Similar wagonways were in use in Germany, and the miners likely brought the idea with them from their native country. Another wagonway was built at Prescott, near Liverpool, sometime around 1600. It also carried coal about 1/2 of a mile to a terminal. Historians note that in 1671 railroads were used in Durham to make it easier to move coal. The first was a Tenfield wagonway.
And it's time for something new, yeah. Gotta know when to let go. Gotta know when to let go. Gotta know when to let go. Sometimes giving up can make.
More of these wagonways, also known as tramroads, were built around the country in the 17th and 18th centuries. The roads used straight and parallel timber rails on which carts with simple flanged iron wheels were drawn by horses, enabling several wagons to be moved simultaneously. They were used primarily to move coal and other goods from one place to another faster and with greater ease than they could be moved by man or horse in the more traditional manner. The first public railway in the world was the Lake Lock Railroad, a narrow-gauge railway built near Wakefield in West Yorkshire, England. The introduction of steam. The first use of steam locomotives was in Great Britain. As noted above, its earliest railways followed straight lines and were built using parallel timber rails. Horse-drawn carts moved along these railways. In 1793, a mile-long tramway was built using L-shaped cast-iron rails. This type of rail was made obsolete when cast-iron rails without guiding ledges were manufactured. These featured cart wheels with flanges. However, cast iron is brittle and rails broke too easily. In 1820, a method to roll wrought iron rails was developed by John Birkinshaw. Wrought iron rails became the standard at that point. In 1807, the first public railway that carried passengers was the Swansea and Mumbles Railway at Oystermouth. It used horse-drawn carriages on an existing tram line. Similar lines opened around the nation. A number of local rail links, powered by horses operated by private railway companies, existed in the late 18th century and in the first part of the 19th century. But while horse-drawn carts or carriages did move goods and people faster than other contemporary forms of transport, they were limited to the speed of the animals. However, several men were experimenting with the use of a steam-powered engine that could pull loads along tracks. Richard Trevithick designed and built the first steam locomotive to run on smooth rails in 1802. However, the Salamanca, a steam locomotive built in 1812 by John Blenkinsop and Matthew Murray, was the first commercially successful model, drawing below courtesy of Wikipedia. It ran on the Middleton Railway, which had rails that were 4 feet apart. The railway's gauge. The locomotive had cog wheels driven by 2 cylinders that were embedded into the top of the boiler. year later, William Hedley and Timothy Hackworth designed a locomotive to be used on the tram line between Stockton and Darlington. This locomotive had pistons that extended upwards to pivoting beams connected by rods to a crankshaft that drove gears attached to the wheels. This design improvement meant that the wheels were coupled, allowing better traction on the rails. In 1814, George Stephenson improved that design with his first locomotive, the first to use single-flanged wheels. Stephenson's design convinced the investors of the proposed Stockton and Darlington Railway to hire him in 1821 as the railway's engineer. Originally designed to be a horse-drawn railway, Stephenson convinced the investors to convert to a steam-powered railway. The act creating the railway was amended to allow the use of steam locomotives and passengers to be conveyed on the line. The 25-mile-long railway opened on September 27, 1825, and became the world's first locomotive-hauled public railway. As one of the most popular forms of travel in the world, railways have earned their place in the pantheon of human transport. From horsepower right through to high-speed locomotives, the history of our rail systems has featured some of the most ingenious moments in engineering, as pioneers came up with different ways to perfect train travel, some of which became the most important moments in railway innovation. Other public railways were built around Great Britain in the 2 decades following the opening of the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. Most were local rail links that were operated by private companies. During the 1840s in particular, railway growth accelerated. At the beginning of the decade, there were a few railway lines scattered around the country. Over the course of the decade, however, a network of railways were constructed. The majority of cities, towns, and even villages had at least one rail connection, and some had 2 or even 3. The influence on railway history is undeniable. What has followed in the years after is a freight load of iconic trains which shaped the railways as we know them today in various ways. George Stephenson, a true pioneer, came to the fore, perfecting a number of the designs, processes, and inventions of those who came before him. His creations included such trains as the Blücher, the first successful flanged wheel adhesion locomotive, and the Locomotion, the steam-powered passenger train. He also came up with the idea for the first ever railway carriage, which he ominously called the Experiment. Electric railways came next in 1837, with the first built in Scotland by a chemist called Robert Davidson in Aberdeen. His design ran on batteries, which he later worked into a larger locomotive called the Galvani. After the Galvanis destroyed by disgruntled railway workers, a similar train was built in Germany by Werner von Siemens, whose Lichthof tram was the first of its kind ever built, and was supplied by running rails and an overhead line which reached forces of up to 180 volts of direct current. The age of diesel and the high-speed train. Diesel-powered railways took rail travel to a whole new level, offering a more productive fuel to use than that of the coal and electricity of years gone. The first diesel railway was created in Switzerland in 1906 as part of a collaborative effort between Rudolf Diesel, Adolf Close, and Gebrüder Sulzer. Despite not achieving immediate commercial success, the idea of diesel-powered railways took off almost straight away after Hermann Lemp An electrical engineer perfected a control system which simplified the driving of diesel trains down to a single lever. The first high-speed rail system began operations in Japan in 1964 and is known as the Shinkansen, or bullet train. Today, Japan has a network of 9 high-speed rail lines serving 22 of its major cities, stretching across its 3 main islands, with 3 more lines in development. It is the busiest high-speed rail service in the world, carrying more than 420,000 passengers on a typical weekday. Its trains travel up to 320 km per hour or 200 mph, and the railway boasts that, in over 50 years of operation, there have been no passenger fatalities or injuries due to accidents.
Thank you for keeping it Jaws Travel Media. Remember to subscribe, watch, like, and share our videos. Once again, thank you and see you in the next one.